Welcome back, everybody. This is Steve Duncan with Slim's Chance 7% Club podcast specifically for college baseball. I've got my partner and good buddy Michael Lane here, and we're fortunate to have a friend of mine, Ryan Wheeler with Penn State. Coach Wheels, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Hey, thank you for having me, and looking forward to talking with you guys, and just appreciate the invitation here.
So, Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm definitely excited for this conversation. We had some great discussions on the previous podcast about recruiting and stuff like that. So it's going to be nice to hear from a current coach in college. So I hope everybody's listening.
So Coach Wheeler, 28 years. It seems like a big number. I know when I say it out loud, I'm sure hearing it, you're like, man, I'm too young to be coaching for 28 years. But back at your alma mater,
Yeah.
how, after all the years of coaching, Temple, St. Joe's of the last couple, now being back at Penn State, how are you feeling there?
I tell you, it's awesome to be back here. When I was here many years ago, this place, changed my life forever. Yeah, just not only athletically, but academically, socially, just everything. And so to have an opportunity to be back here to help this program, to try to build it into, what we all hope it can be as alumni, it's been great, and it's exciting. And we've been working hard. Um, I feel like we're going 1,000 miles a minute every day. Our hair's on fire, but it's been good to be back and enjoying State College in Happy Valley.
So, c- congrats on a really strong run last year to wrap it up. I know you didn't get the last game to finish the way that you had hoped, but making it to Big Ten championship. I think that was Penn State's first winning season since 2016, other than
Yeah,
the COVID shortened season.
yeah,
So you guys turn the program around. We're above 500, make a really strong run in the Big Ten
yeah,
tourney. And when I looked at the roster, it seemed like you had some very good seniors and grad students, but the roster wasn't overwhelming. It seemed like you had a lot of guys eligible to return to potentially have a really good supporting cast coming back to build upon. Is that what
yeah,
you're seeing?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, going back to that first year, I mean, really, we didn't have any expectations. Just not knowing the roster, everything being new for not only us but for the players. There really wasn't any level of expectation other than we knew we wanted to compete, we knew we wanted to win, we knew we wanted to try to win a Big Ten championship. Um, the first, when we got here, the stadium and the field was going under some renovations, so we didn't even have our field to practice on. We had to go off campus to get to know these guys and to start to implement the things that we were wanting to do. And so, there were just some different things like that were thrown at us to the point where when we got to that final game, the Big Ten championship, it was like, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? And really, it was a testament to Coach Gambino and his messaging to the team, all season long, and to the players for really buying in. People have asked me, well, what was it? What did you guys do? And really, I said what we did was once they started to understand what we were trying to do and just playing baseball, we just got out of their way and let them play. And so those kids, they really did a great job. And it was a mix, of returning players that decided to stay, and then some key transfers and things that we brought in. Um, yes, we did lose some of those guys that were 1 year grad transfers, and we tried to replace them with some other transfers. We obviously had a freshman class that we brought in that's doing well, and so yes, this year's roster is a little bit younger and a little bit more I don't want to say stable, but there's certainly some returning pieces from last year.
So here we are, December 31st.
Mm-hmm.
What is, other than enjoying some family time and maybe a little bit of not being chaotic like when the season starts,
Yeah.
what's a Penn State coach doing baseball wise these last couple of
Yeah.
weeks of December and the first week or so of January?
Yeah. Well, obviously, there's a part of coaching that a lot of people don't see, and that's the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. They see what happens on the field and the work that we do with the players. But in order to, put a season together, there's just a lot that goes on behind the scenes administratively with, working out your travel and making sure you've got all the equipment ordered and certainly we have other staff here that helps us to do that stuff, but we're really just trying to get organized for the year and make sure that, the preseason, there's a short amount of time when we do get back and are able to start practicing, making sure we're organized so that, we're efficient and ready to go there. So really just, it moves at a slower pace, but there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to make sure that this train, is ready to run once the season starts.
Okay. Michael.
Yeah, one of the things I want to get into this podcast, we made this podcast to try to help high school kids find their way through this recruiting world. And as you know, these last few years has gotten crazier and crazier. So I definitely want to dive into that sort of thing first. But let's start with the high school guys. When you're going out and you're looking at showcases and that sort of thing, what are some of the first things you notice with a kid?
Yeah. Well, when we're going out and we're looking at players, I mean, obviously it just depends on um, the arena that we're looking at. If we're going to an individual game, all right, there's a few less players on the field compared to, a larger showcase where there might be
Yeah.
a hundred or a couple hundred players on the field. But, the bodies are typically something that we tend to look at first, size, frame, just how a guy's put together and, watching how they move and sort of go about their business. Recruiting, there's everybody's a little bit different in what they look for and what they value. Certainly, it's program to program, but you've got to be almost like an investigative reporter, so to speak. We can assess their baseball ability pretty quickly. Watching them throw, watching them run, do some different things on the field, swing the bat. We can assess that ability and kind of figure out where it's at now and where we think it's going to be. But it's the things that are in between, sort of, their work ethic and their commitment to the game and just some of the factors that are hard to measure. Those are the things that we're trying to pick up on and just, like I said, watch everything that they're doing to just get a better idea of who we think that person might be. But typically, the first thing we're going to look at is the body and the movements. Are they athletic enough, or are they athletic at all? Do they, seem to possess some baseball skills or not? And then we kind of go from there and zero in on particular guys that sort of catch our eye, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you start with body, say dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Does the player look the part?
Yeah.
And then quickly, I've heard coaches say, and you and I might have even had this conversation last summer. Sometimes you can just watch a kid walk out of the dugout, walking to his position, and see, are they athletic? Are they not athletic? Does it look like they can put one foot in front of the other?
Yeah.
A light jog, a toss across, and you can get a feel, maybe not a true measure of all of their capabilities, but you can quickly say, all right, I want to watch this, or this is not going to be anything that I'm going to be interested in that walk from the dugout.
Right.
what other things are you paying attention? Are the coaches paying attention to interaction with other players, interaction with coaches and their own coaching staff or opposing coaching staff, how they carry themselves from the dugout to the field?
Yeah.
Do I look like a player? Am I back in the hood? My hat's on backwards and my shirt's half. Are those the kind of things that also are an important thing to look at?
All of those things, help us to build a picture of who this young man is. You know, we're looking at guys that we want to spend, the next 3 or 4 years with. And so you need to be able to build a relationship with that player, because if you're going to make them better, you're going to have to communicate with them. You're going to have to coach them. So, I've always said that coaches tend to recruit players that are similar in personality to them, and so I don't wear my hat backwards. I typically tuck my shirt in. I try to look professional when I go out there recruiting. So I'm going to probably look or gravitate towards those guys that have that certain look about them. Like I said, the walk, the way they carry their glove, running out to the field. What do they do, after they have a mistake? Typically, we tell guys, we want to come and see you fail a little bit so that we see how you handle it. Because you will come to, in this case, Penn State or one of the other places I've been, and you're going to fail. You're going to have adversity. How do you handle that adversity in that moment? And are you able to move forward and continue to play the game? So, yes, we're constantly looking at all of those little things to try to build that picture of who or what the character and makeup of that individual is. So I think as I say, there's really two pieces to the recruiting. There's your ability, baseball ability, and then there's your character and makeup. And you can have the greatest person or the best baseball ability in the world, but if your character and makeup aren't very good, that's not a guy that's going to be a fit for us. And you can be the nicest person in the world and be a great kid, but if you can't play the game, well, that's not a good fit. So you really have to have that combination. And like I said, we can assess the baseball ability pretty quickly, from watching them play and do things on the field. It's that character and makeup piece that is really hard um, to figure out. And it's why you'd like to have some conversations with the kid. But yes, also see how they interact with their parents, with their coaches, with other teammates, just to get an idea of just what kind of guy this is.
Yeah, I remember hearing a story. I think it was the Vandy coach, Tim Corbin.
Hmm.
Uh, but it was before he was at Vandy, I think Clemson. And he was
Okay.
telling a story where he was out recruiting, and there was this guy that they were pretty set on, and he went out to watch him. And he saw interaction with this player and his mom, where the mom kind of reached over, handed her son a Gatorade, and the way he kind of handed the Gatorade back to her, didn't say thank you, kind of threw it back. He went back to the staff and said he's going to be a really good baseball player. He's going to play for a long time, but I don't want him on my team. Uh,
Right.
do you have any kind of stories like that, without naming any names, kind of write a kid off based off of something you see?
I can't, I'm trying to think of one in particular, but I mean, I certainly can remember um, from a team camp, that we did at St. Joe's, and there was um, I guess I can say the position. It was a pitcher. Let's just say it was a pitcher. Um, and I'd already seen him throw a couple times during the high school season. Really, really liked him, and thought this guy, this is it. He's high on our board. Um, and we're going to offer him. And then, his team, he came to the team camp and, just had an opportunity to be sitting in the dugout and watching him, interact with his teammates or not interact with his teammates was the big thing. And then, he struggled on the mound a little bit. And he came in and he punched the wall. I don't know if he broke his hand or not, but I know it hurt. He was shaking it. And I said, yeah, no, I'm out. I don't care how good this guy is. He's just, I don't want to deal with that. He's not for us. And so, we passed on him. But a lot of times these things become deciding factors when it's down to a couple guys for a position. It's, well, hey, I remember seeing him do this, or I didn't like the way he interacted with his mom and dad. In fact, you know, his mom was carrying his bag when they were leaving the field instead of him. Um, I'm not sure if this is the right guy fit for us. So, but that picture, that's one that stands out to me because I really like this guy, and he did go on to have a successful career at another school. Um, and I think he grew up some and obviously matured a little bit, but at that time, I'm like, "Well, I just don't know where this is headed," and so we steered clear of him. So that stuff matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at another team camp this
Hmm.
past summer at in our backyard at Delaware, and I
Hmm.
was standing there. I don't remember who we were playing. Pretty good team, and they had a pitcher that came out. I think he was 16, a younger guy,
Hmm.
um, and threw gas, but just couldn't spot it.
Hmm.
And it was a perfect example, unfortunately for the young man, a perfect example for our players to see. We had two coaches that are friends of mine that were in the dugout that, as we're standing there talking, said to me, "This is exactly what happens when you get a player crossed off," because both of these coaches were looking at him
Hmm.
as somebody they wanted to have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And he's losing his mind and throwing his hat. And I think the center fielder had
Hmm.
an error, and then he's yelling at him. Then he doesn't get a close pitch, and he starts telling the umpire it's mind
Yeah.
boggling to watch. Unfortunately, somebody melt down like that, but to not get them prepared for. I mean, this game is about failure, and
Yes.
understanding and being able to deal with that so that it parlays into life.
Yes.
It's disappointing to see, but we get these examples right in front of us from time to time,
Yeah.
and you hope that the other guys learn from that instance.
Sure. And I recognize that at 17, 18, I wasn't the most mature young man either at that time. Um, but it's a different time, and there's more kids playing. There's more opportunities for us to see players, and so if we have a choice, which we do, to maybe let me take a look at somebody else that maybe is a little bit more mature right now. We're going to do that, but we also try to cut some guys some breaks and say, okay, he's 18 years old. I mean, we try to weigh what it is that we maybe don't like, and
Right,
is that something that's going to change? Can it change? Can I work with this? Like we're trying to find out if guys are coachable and if it's somebody that we want to be around.
right,
So that vibe that we get when they visit is also very important. Just the types of questions they ask, how they present themselves when they show up, just the interaction we have with them while we're spending time with them on campus is important. And here's a message for all the parents. I mean, we all want for our kids, we all want what's best. But when you have an opportunity to go on one of these visits, um, parents, please let your sons do the talking. You're an important part of the equation and the decision-making process. However, we want to talk to Johnny or Billy or whoever your son's name is. Um, we want to hear from them when we ask a question. I have yet in 28 years of coaching to meet a set of parents who told me that my kid, he's awful. He's a bad kid, and they all tell me, of course I'm biased, but he's really a great kid. Well, I kind of figured you would say that. So haven't heard anybody tell me anything differently. So we're going to know that beforehand. But
right,
let's let us get to know him and find out how great of a kid he is. Let him do the talking, no matter how socially awkward he may be at the time, and not have the ability to communicate. He needs to learn, at some point. So,
right.
and I know it's hard for parents to sit back there. I had to do the same thing with my son, who talked a lot then. He talks a lot more now. But I was like, well, geez, I want to speak, but No, shut up. Let him answer the question. So just something for all the parents out there.
That's good information. I know we spend a lot of time. Um, we had a parent meeting a couple days ago with our showcase team, and I sometimes come across a little brash, and I tell them, hey, I need to put on the coach's hat right now, and I need you to understand. I'm going to tell you some things, and I'm just being brutally honest because you have to hear it. Because coaches don't want to hear this or deal with this, and the parents play a big role. But to be extremely candid, the role is when the Bills do. That's the role that you have.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that that's taken care of. But outside of that, we're not interested in going through what position the kid wants to play through mom and dad, or any of those other things. And it also teaches the player some maturity, how to interact, how to become the adult that they need to be to interact in the adult world. So
Absolutely. Moms and dads are there to really help them see the big picture and weigh the pros and cons of each of their potential opportunities. I mean, that's really where the parents come in. And then, of course, as you're going on these visits or, having interactions with coaches, um, if there's a question that maybe the young man's not thinking of, it's okay to ask the questions and to talk to the coaches. But like I said, when we ask, a potential player about his fastball, let's say it's a pitcher, and how do you grip your fastball? And he starts to answer, and then dad chimes in as well. Yeah, I showed him in the backyard. I would just move his fingers a little bit, and I mean, it really gets him on. And he goes on and on. Okay, thanks, I appreciate that, but I really don't need all.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I wanna get in a little bit with kind of how high school recruiting has changed since the portal has been in effect. It seems to be with the coaches have talked about it, that the high school stuff is happening a little bit later now because they have to first look at the portal, see what money they have for the guys in the portal, then they get to the high school guys. Is that the same situation you guys are in at Penn State?
Um, I mean, yes and no. I mean, so in the year and a half that we have been here, so much has changed, in that time
Yeah.
compared to, prior to that. So, and it's going to continue to change. And I'm sure we may get to, this ruling with the junior college stuff a little bit later, but which could change things yet again. But you know, as we look at things, we now go into the recruiting anticipating that we're going to take a certain number of transfer, type students. It could be two some years, in other years it could be five or six. It just depends on how big your senior class is and what you think you need to replace. And certainly if you have some young guys that could be drafted as juniors, that's going to factor in. So, with that in mind, it then tells you how many high school kids you're going to go out and get. Um, are you so I guess in the way that it would change is that you're not going out and necessarily trying to get all of your class committed with high school players, before a certain date, before the portal opens, I guess in May. Um, but at the same time, you're going to go out and get some. You're going to fill some of that class with high school players, knowing that you're probably also going to be picking up a number of transfers. Just depends on how you want to build your team. Some programs are going to be a lot more portal and junior college and transfer graduate students heavy, and then others are going to be a little bit more high school heavy with filling in holes with the transfers and stuff like that. Some of that depends on the school that you're at. There's it's not just about your baseball ability. You still have to go. You still have to go to class. You still have to get a degree, and so those things factor in from an admissions standpoint and just what the school lets you do. So schools that maybe are a little bit more high school heavy right now, they may tell you, well, we'd love to go get some grad students or get some transfers, but we just can't get them in. So we're going more for the high school kids where the other programs, they look, we got to win now. And I'm going to go get guys that I think are a little bit more proven, have some college experience under their belt, and we're going with the transfers over the high school kids. So it just depends. But here I think we're still a little bit of a mix, and we're still trying to balance out our roster and get our classes, straight with regard to the numbers in of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So we're still a little out of whack with things, but we're trying to be a little bit more high school heavy so that we can get some development going. Um, but with the roster being cut down to 34 come next year, well, I don't know how much more time. There's not as much time for development. Now you need guys that are a little bit more ready to go. So, it continues to evolve and change just with each one of these court decisions and rulings that come out.
Yeah, I feel like as we're watching programs, your more seasoned, established program will use the portal, but use it to fill an immediate gap and not live on it. Whereas a program, let's say you decided to take a flyer and go take over a program that just needs to be revamped, and you may live the first few years heavily in the portal to just get some guys so that you can try to get some W's on the board to attract some high school kids that want to come, right? And then as the program gets more established, you're using the portal to be, surgical and specific with what you're bringing in, and you can rely on the high school. So I think a couple of things. One, that the high school route, some of the conversations that I've had with coaches, the concern is, how much am I going to invest in this freshman, knowing this new portal craziness that they may come in and you got the Tommy Tanks that has a phenomenal NC State year. And then I fault the young man not at all. I think he did what he needed to do. He got a signing bonus. He got paid. He won a national championship. A lot of things went the right way, but not everybody has that same kind of result. And I think coaches understanding the portal and how they need to manage it so that they don't become the development program for another senior, more established program. So we touched on the portal a little bit, and your recruiting and the focus probably more so on high school to develop. How does what you just mentioned, we just had a ruling. Well, we had a ruling that I think, if I understood correctly, I read something 2 days ago where the NCAA came out to kind of clarify, because we started having wildfire that, hey, everybody should go to JUCO. Matter of fact, I think I had a couple of JUCO coaches tell me, hey, you should send me all your guys so they can get 2 years of maturity and still have their 4 years. And that wasn't really what it was, to give these 10 guys or 10 players, they were given the okay. And now the NCAA has to reassess, how do they react to this JUCO ruling that could potentially give people 6 years or some modification where they have more than 4 of eligibility. Where are you? Where's Penn State in this? And I know it's fresh. Where's Penn State in this?
So, we when it came out, as you mentioned, this time of year, it's a little bit slower. We're not all in the office together. In fact, Coach Gambino was on vacation with his family, and we were doing Christmas shopping, so on and so forth. So we haven't really had a chance to sit down and talk about it as a staff. We've kind of had some one-off conversations with each other, and I think it's just something that we're certainly going to have to look at, because it does open a whole nother door if if you can go find somebody that's 20, 21 years old that hasn't used any years of eligibility, they can come in compared to a 17 or 18-year-old young man who's just coming out of high school. But I still, I don't know if we're going to then scrap all the high school stuff and say we're strictly going junior college. Once again, there still isn't, the academics is still an element that needs to be introduced here, and you just got to make sure that you're funding the kids that are going to fit with you academically, and that you can get into school, as well as be good baseball players. But I think we're also, like you kind of touched on, they maybe need to go back and revise what they came out with for those 10 guys. So we're not so sure that this is actually going to stick. And therefore, if it's not going to stick, let's not waste our time thinking about revamping our whole recruiting until we actually know that, all right, this is what it's going to be moving forward from now until something else comes up.
Right.
So we just haven't had a lot of discussions, but it certainly is going to prompt us to look at things and make some decisions on which direction we want to go.
Yeah, I know something that we tell our guys in this organization is like now more than ever, it's important to be ready to play as soon as you get there.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to these guys that are going through it in high school when there's so much uncertainty within the college world?
Well, I think the biggest piece that guys and families and players, organizations that are helping these young men need to keep in mind is trying to find the right level of play for that player.
Yeah.
I know everybody would love to go to the big Power Five schools and SEC, ACC, Big Ten program, but there's only so many roster spots and there's only so many of those programs out there. I know everybody thinks that they have to play Division One in order to justify themselves as a player. And that is not the case at all. And I will speak for my own son, who is at a Division III program, top 25 program. I'm proud of my son. I think he's a good player. Coming out of high school, I don't know that he was ready to be a Division I player at that level. And he went to the Division III school, had an opportunity to compete for playing time his first year, and was able to earn some about halfway through, and backed it up last year with a nice season. And now as a junior, he's going into the season, knowing that he's established and going to play. But finding that, admitting or saying that it's okay to go to a Division II or Division III school, that's okay. If that's where the opportunities present themselves for you to get on the field, then that's what they should be looking at. And I know a lot of people sort of snub or put their nose up. I'm a Division I player. I'm not going to play Division II or Division III. There's really good baseball at Division II or Division III. I mean, really good baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's only going to get better because our rosters are going to be cut. We have less spots to take players at our level, and so players are going to filter down to those other levels, and there's going to be some really good players that are playing in those programs. So I think like I said, finding that level that is the right fit for them to play is going to give them the best chance to get on the field and play as a freshman. Obviously, continuing to practice, continuing to work on your game, and all those things are going to be important. But if you're just not ready for a year or two to play at the Division I level, and all you're doing is coming in and practicing and working out, and then sitting on the bench and watching the games, well, that gets old. That's not a lot of fun. So I think having the chance to get on the field, maybe at a program that's 2 or 3 good is best. So
I think we spend a lot of time. I use a comparison. There's a D3 program that's an hour or so from us that is a national power, constantly fighting for a national championship and has won some. And I tell our guys, if you're looking at this as a D1, D2, D3, you're completely missing what the scope is. You should be looking at it school by school, and are you going to play? How exciting would it be to be at a school for 4 years that had a lot of success, and you got to see front row seat from the dugout of all 4 years? It gets old. I have a story of there's a local high school that used to be a power here, and I had one of my players years ago. He was in 8th grade, and we were sitting at the state championship game, and I said to him, he was getting ready to go to that school in 9th grade, and I said, so my question to you is, you're going to this school, and we use the phrase, the name on the front or the name on the back, which is more important? And I said, you're going to a school where the name on the front is way more important. How would you feel if you were here and won 2 state championships, but you never got on the field? And he's like, I'd be fine. I'd be okay with it. And I said, okay. And fast forward 4 years, and he was at the school, and they won 2 state championships, and he didn't get a lot of playing time. And his senior year, he was not happy. And so I use it as an example because you say, yeah, I just want to win, and you don't recognize that maybe you don't get on the field because there's other talented players that come in. And so if you get locked into D1, D2, D3, meaning D1 is the best talent, man, there's some D3s that beat the brakes off of D1 schools, and I see it constantly. And I even use it with some of the guys. I'll tell them, hey, go look at this. Our coaches will send a screenshot of a D2 beating a D1 program, and it happens. Vandy, I mean, the big schools, that you go play a 4-game series and you do it a few times, you lose one. It's a pitching matchup. You lose one, and you use it as a, hey, look, you thought that it was D1 always wins. That's not the case. I think having that perspective can be helpful to parents. I unfortunately feel like sometimes parents have they want to be able to puff their chest and say, my kid went to D1 and he's going to Penn State. And, so understanding the levels of D1, D2, D3, I think, and it sounds like, you're on the same page with what you said, is less important than the program, the school. Are you going to play? How does it fit with the other things that you're supposed to be in college for?
Yeah. Do you even like the campus? Do you like where it's located? Do they have, your major, something you're interested in studying? There's a lot of things. The size of the school is it too small, too big, whatever the case may be. All those things are factors in this process, as opposed to just, oh, it's a Division I school, or Division II or Division III. So you got to, and that's where the parents can come in and help to give perspective. But as we said, some of them are a little warped. Trying to pick the politically correct term.
Hey, this is not a PC program, Coach. Be honest.
Perspective isn't very good, or they have a hard time, providing that perspective for their son. So, I think where you as travel organizations come in, I think it's great that you try to give them that perspective because you're seeing it with other players that have come through. You're able to compare, one player to or current player now to a player from the past and say, okay, this guy, he went to this type of school. I think this is the kind of schools that you should be looking at based on your ability, where you're at, so on and so forth. So that's where you guys can really help steer these guys, but they got to listen to you.
Right. Right.
That's hard for you guys to get accomplished, is having them listen.
So I had a couple more things, and I want to be respectful of your time. I had a couple more things. I want to fire these at you, and then you can address them. One, your players now that are a part of the program. What are they supposed to be? What do you expect them to be doing December 1 to January 17th, that time period of classes ending and coming back, number one?
Yeah.
Number two, what role does NIL play with baseball and specifically Penn State? Because I know the football and the basketball world is very different than the baseball world and softball world. But at Penn State, what role does NIL play? And then I'll let you address those two, and then I have one more question specific to us.
Sure. So we finished team practice. I think it was the day before Halloween, so October 30th was when we were finished with sort of our team segment from the fall. Where we had 20 hours a week with these guys. We moved into a 3-week period then where we were doing individual work with them again. Weightlifting, things like that, up until Thanksgiving. Then once we get back from Thanksgiving, because of NCAA rules, the academic calendar, things like that, there's not a lot of time for us to be working with them, in small groups or individuals. So, a lot falls onto them. hopefully, through all of our work in the fall and sort of a meeting with them, typically right before Thanksgiving there, we've given them a plan to work on them sort of over the next month, um, to help them get better, but also, give their bodies a chance to recover and take a little bit of a break from baseball. I don't want to say completely shut it down and do nothing, because guys are going to always want to do something. It just may be a little bit less intense, but the work that they are doing, let's make sure that it's beneficial. If all you're going to do is go in there and hit, you don't need to take 500 swings. If you're going to take 50 swings, let's make sure that they're 50 swings that you're working on something that is a weakness for you. But we try to give our guys a little bit of a break from baseball, in that December 1 to January 1 window, just to give their bodies a chance to recover and just take a break from it. Because come January 1, well, now we're hitting the ground running and we're going to go full tilt, probably until almost next Thanksgiving, with the season just around the corner, our guys will come back. Once again, we're not going to be able to work with them until classes begin, which for us, I think is like the 14th, 12th, somewhere in there. So they'll come back a little bit early, but they'll be able to use the facilities and do stuff on their own. They'll maybe have some captain's practices or whatever for those guys that are back. And then we'll go individuals, leading up to team practice, which is around the 24th or 26th of January. And then there's a few weeks, full team practice, and then we play the 14th of February. So there's not a lot of time, but they should be, tonight, tomorrow, sort of their last sort of break. Come Thursday, they need to start getting it ramped up and going. And of course, pitchers, they're going to be a little bit different. They're going to need to be on a throwing program. Their break probably happened a little bit more in November, because they're going to need to get going here in January, so that they come January 24th. They're ready to face hitters live, throw 2 or 3 innings of an inner squad if we need them to.
Right.
So
Right.
their window's a little bit different, and their break's a little bit different. But the strength and conditioning this time of year becomes a really big piece, and a little less baseball, but not a complete turn off or shutdown of baseball type stuff. You mentioned NIL and the part that it plays, and it plays a part, now, and part of what my responsibilities are here with Penn State is to fundraise, not only for facility upgrades, scholarships, things like that, but it's for NIL purposes. And whether we want to admit it or not, paying players now is part of the deal. And when you're looking to go into the transfer portal to try to upgrade your roster or replace, somebody that you may have lost in the draft, well, in order to get them, you're going to have to spend some money now to do that. I think, the SEC as a league, they've got the most money, and individually, each one of those programs, all have more money than, say, I think the next one is the ACC, where most of those schools, will have a nice pool of money. I'd say the Big Ten is probably third. However, we're quickly catching up to the other schools in the amount of money that we have available to use to go and get players with NIL. We're using NIL money to bring them in.
Okay.
So it is a factor, yes.
Okay. And then the last question that I had was, what role is travel baseball having in your recruiting? I don't see, most of my conversations aren't coaches going to high school games anymore. Not that they wouldn't, but you might see 1 or 2 guys, whereas a travel ball team could have 5 or 6 or a 20. So what role is travel? And then you've seen our program firsthand for 4, 5, 6 years now. What feedback can you give me from a college coach's perspective on our program, and either what do you see that makes us a little bit different, or what do you see that we can put a focus on to become better?
Okay. If I forget one of those questions, just throw it at me. But I'll try. I was trying to remember all the different questions. Um, so first of all, I think travel baseball is very important. It is difficult for us to get out during the high school season because we're in season. Um, and our focus is with the players that we have here and trying to win the games here. So matching up times to get out and see guys becomes difficult here in the Northeast. Yeah, the weather doesn't always cooperate either. So it's not that high school baseball isn't important. It's just that there's some factors that come into play that make it a little bit more difficult for us to get out and see games. I would say towards the end of the high school season, as our season's winding down, the weather gets better. We have more opportunities to get out there and see it. So, high school is still good, but the summertime, and the travel baseball, that's really critical for us because we don't have rules other than a few, quiet period or I'm sorry, dead periods, with Father's Day, 4th of July. Um, Other than that, we can kind of come and go as we want, and the weather's great. So the travel baseball becomes very, very important for us to be able to see guys play in a competitive environment. Um, with regard to your organization, I've seen, I didn't know anything about your organization 4 or 5 years ago, and you all came to one of our team camps when I was at St. Joe's University, and once again, I didn't have a level of expectation. You guys came in there, and I was like, man, these guys have some players, and from the standpoint you talked about the way guys walked on and off the field, the way you conducted yourself as an organization, it was very professional, I guess is the way. It wasn't, just a group of players put together and you kind of let them do what they want. Everything was organized. The players looked the part. They did the right things. They were playing the game the right way. And you all were coaching. You were spending time coaching them as opposed to just making sure nobody got hurt and they had bats and balls. So I think, that's one of the things that makes your organization stand out from the rest. I know when we come to see you guys play, you're going to have some talent on the field, and they're going to be coached and play the game the right way. Then it's just up to us to decide whether we think it's the right fit for us as a program based on our ability. I think one of the other things that makes your organization stand out is that you're not you don't have 17 travel teams, or at least I don't think you do, at all the different age levels. You maybe have one or two at each of the age levels, and therefore, there's a focus on those players and not of 20 or 30 players as opposed to 70 or 80 or 100 or whatever it may be.
Right.
You don't dilute your talent across so many teams that now I've got to chase down 10 different teams in order to see the best players in the organization. You're small, you're intimate, and you I think therefore when you talk about your players, you know them better. Because you're working with them more closely, and therefore you can tell me those little things that I want to know about a young man, that maybe some other coaches can't because they're not spending time with them. So, those are the things that I think make your organization stand out. And you guys, you all were up here last summer, and it was awesome. You guys were awesome, and there were a few kids that we're looking at and recruiting, and we had them come back for one of our prospect camps to get another look, to have the other coaches see them. So, and that's where for us then dealing with the travel teams and the organizations, those relationships are really important to us and helping our recruiting efforts.
Thank you.
Did I
Thank you for
answer
the
all the
feedback on
questions?
that. Yeah, that was, again, it was really, it sounded like a lot. It was really two, what role was travel and, our program specifically,
Yeah.
what kind of makes us a little bit different, good or bad. So that was the other thing. Michael, what else do you have?
That's it. I think we're pretty much at our time limit. I just want to thank you, Coach. That was an awesome conversation. I hope all the high school guys are listening to this and just understanding that everything that we went over today. I think that was awesome. Thank you, Coach.
You're welcome. And you know, when you had asked me to speak, I was like, who really wants to hear what I have to say? Like that's more the thing with me. Not the 28 years that I've been doing this, but more like who really wants to listen to what I have to say. So I appreciate that you guys at least wanted to hear what I had to say.
You'd be
Thanks.
surprised. There's coaches, a lot of people that want to, and they need to. You know,
Absolutely.
I think Michael and I probably feel the same way. Who really wants to hear from, you know, two local guys where we're from? But I also know we've done this a little bit, and you've done it a lot more than we have in this world. And it's information that needs to be shared. And sometimes when I coach or talk to my son, it's just my son. But when you say it, it's completely different because it's you and it's not dad. And I think your expertise in, you know, you're well respected in the community. And I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you.
Well, thanks. And I may have you talk to my son because when I try to give him advice, he's like, well, what do you know? Like who? You don't know what you're talking about. So,
Right.
um, so even in my own house, you know, I don't think people want to listen to what I have to say. So I may need you to call my son and coach him and give him some advice.
I'm happy to. Happy to anytime.
Okay.
Well,
Thanks.
thanks, Coach. Michael, always great. We'll be back here soon and be able to do the next podcast. This is Steve Duncan with my friend Michael Lane and my friend Coach Wheeler. Thank you very much. Slum's Chance 7% Club. Have a great day, everybody.